What is up, friends? Disenchantment Part 3 just dropped on Netflix, and there is a ton to discuss. I recently rewatched the first 20 episodes of Disenchantment for maybe the third time, and overall I found myself having the same issue each rewatch. The story, characters, world building, and lore are all super engaging, but unfortunately, the show just doesn't make me laugh as much as I'd hoped. That being said, on this rewatch, I did find myself more engaged in the world than I ever had been, so I was pretty excited going into Part 3, and I have to say, these 10 episodes once again delivered in the world building department. I still think the show leaves a bit to be desired in the comedy department, but this season fully leans into the serialization, which was something I think it really needed to do. Plus, the season brought in a couple of my favorite Futurama writers, Ken Keeler and Bill Odenkirk. Part 3 probably delivered the most engaging, story-focused episodes in the entire franchise, and there is tons to speculate about. So let's get down to it and break down Disenchantment Part 3. Spoilers ahead. Also, if you like this breakdown, consider subscribing. I've got a few more Disenchantment breakdowns planned, and I also have a ton of Futurama videos already if you're into the graining verse. Thanks. Wow, I love Dreamland Castle. It's such a cool design, and there are so many layers of security. It's high up on a hill, has a drawbridge, guards watching the entrance. But you know what it won't protect them from? Data thieves, which is where today's sponsor, Surfshark, comes in. Surfshark VPN can do exactly that. Protect your information from data thieves and secure your online life. On top of that, Surfshark can help you unlock tons of content on streaming services like Netflix by logging in through a different country. So if you've run out of cartoons to watch on the US's Netflix library, no sweat. Try out Australia or Japan. You can find shows like Rick and Morty, Archer, Close Enough, and more. One subscription gives you access to Surfshark on unlimited devices, so you can load it up on your PC, phone, tablet, Mac, you name it. Plus, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's plenty of time to make sure Surfshark is right for you. I've even got a special offer code for you that'll get you 83% off and 3 extra months on top of that for free. Just go to the link in the description of this video and enter the promo code Cellos to get this awesome offer. Alright, let's dive into Disenchantment Part 3. Alright, so the first thing I want to say is that Disenchantment is gorgeous. I feel like I forget just how good this show looks. There are some seriously mesmerizing sequences with some of the prettiest locations I've ever seen in any animation. This is, without a doubt, the best looking matte graining series. Also, as I said before, this season finally fully leans into serialization. The first and second parts of Disenchantment usually did 2 to 3 episode arcs at the beginning and end of each part, before falling back into a bit of a status quo story of the week style storytelling, but not Part 3. Nearly the entire season feels like an ongoing continuation, which was really welcomed. I didn't love that the show previously seemed afraid to lean into that kind of storytelling, but I think the world and lore really benefits from the serialization. And this, for sure, ended up being the most engaging season in the story department. Part 3 picks up from Part 2's cliffhanger, with Bean, Elfo, and Lucy being confronted by the Troggs and Dagmar beneath Dreamland. This first episode was jam-packed with more incredible world building. The Trogg society was absolutely gorgeous and so creative. The more they expand the world in Disenchantment, the more I fall in love with it. And this season managed to world build a lot. There was also another incredible drug trip sequence, and I really hope they make a habit out of doing these every single season, because they're always fun. The first couple of episodes focus on our main trio trying to figure out Dagmar's plan in the Trogg society, while Oddval and the Archdruidess do their best to control Derek, who is now the king of Dreamland, while Zog heals from his gunshot wound. The Archdruidess ends up burying Zog alive. He's mined from underneath by the Troggs. This has some wild implications. The Troggs apparently pull corpses down from underneath graveyards, though it isn't perfectly clear what they do with them, but it's lore, interesting lore. These first 2 episodes also start to reveal some of Dreamland's monarchical history and hints that there's some sort of curse placed on the rulers of Dreamland. It also reveals that Bean, Elfo, and Lucy as a trio somehow represent the Trogg's saviors, which hasn't been too deeply explored yet, but it's a very interesting development. And on top of all these lore hints, Dagmar escapes once again, but seemingly using some sort of electric magic that stems from Bean, which makes sense. The first Steamland episode was called The Electric Princess, and we'll talk more about this when we get to the Steamland arc. Overall, these first 2 episodes, Subterranean Homesick Blues and You're the Bean, did follow up the cliffhanger in Part 2 pretty effectively. I love that they immediately jumped into world expansion with the Trogg Society, and laying down all of these mysterious hints regarding characters' larger roles in the Disenchantment world is going to make speculation really fun. These 10 episodes were the first written as part of the second production cycle, and it seems like going into this new run, they probably decided to start to lay the groundwork for more overarching ideas. I was a little worried that things were going to too quickly go back to the status quo, just like in parts 1 and 2, and the third third episode, Beanie Get Your Gun, sadly felt like they were once again heading that direction, but I was happily surprised when they moved away from this tendency. The end of each set of 10 episodes has sort of teased a character death only to bring them back in the beginning of the subsequent part, and with Zog surviving his gunshot wound, I fully expected him to go back to being king, but they managed to find an interesting way to change up the status quo. Basically, the torture Zog underwent at the hands of Oddval and Druidess drove him mad, which prevents him from being able to adequately rule. So even though they bailed on killing Zog, they did manage to maintain the power vacuum from his absence, which really helped propel the entire season forward. This episode also once again broke open the world building by revealing Fairy World, another beautiful society in the forest. Pretty much every new society they introduce in this show is gorgeous, and they introduced a lot this year. The end of the episode really effectively leads into a very strong 3-episode arc that largely takes place in Steamland. Basically, it's revealed that the Druidess is somehow related to Steamland, and she escapes Dreamland on a motorcycle. Okay, I gotta point out that I was really impressed with the 3D animation in this sequence. Oftentimes 3D animation within 2D shows stands out like a sore thumb, and there are even sequences later in these episodes where this is also the case, but the Druidess on her motorcycle was so well implemented into the 2D animation. It's one of the most impressive examples of 2D 3D blending I've ever seen. The Steamland arc is another masterclass in world building. They clearly really leaned into the world expansion this season, and I think it paid off. Medieval fantasy world building is cool, but the introduction of Steamland really makes Disenchantment's world unique compared to other examples in the genre. Bean and Elfo travel to Steamland to find the Druidess, and Elfo finds himself hanging out in a club full of adventurers called the League of Gallivanting Scrutinators. Meanwhile, Bean finds herself infiltrating Gunderson's steamworks in search of the Druidess. She befriends a worker named Gordy on her search, but in the end it's revealed that this was all a ruse and that Gordy is actually Alva Gunderson, founder of Gunderson's steamworks, and honestly, he's effectively the ruler of Steamland. He's also played by Richard Ayoade, who gives an excellent performance, but honestly, when doesn't he give a great performance? Alva tries to woo Bean and forge a connection between Steamland and Dreamland, but it seems to mostly be so that he can harness the magic of Dreamland and combine its abilities with the science of Steamland.
An alliance is what I'm offering, between magic and science.
Meanwhile, Elfo is captured and placed in a carnival and with otherworldly oddities, and the following episode is spent with Bean escaping Gunderson and rescuing Elfo. This also once again reveals Bean's electric powers, as she not only short-circuits these little robots, but creates a power outage for the entirety of Steamland. So like I said, Steamland is already just an amazing and fully realized location in Dreamland. We've basically spent 3 episodes here total, but we get such a great sense of the culture so quickly. Obviously, it's way more modern than the rest of the show, but it definitely sets itself apart with this fun, creative steampunk aesthetic. There's also a lot to consider in regards to Dreamland's magic and Bean's apparent electrical abilities. Is Bean's electricity based on that aforementioned magic of Dreamland, or is it actually related to her mother's heritage, as we saw Dagmar seemingly utilize it to escape? Lots of fun stuff to speculate about. These episodes also introduced Mora the mermaid at the same carnival where Elfo was imprisoned, and she's the focus of probably my favorite episode of part 3. Bean, Elfo, and Mora escape Dreamland on a tugboat, and we get some really touching bonding scenes between Bean and Mora. They have such great chemistry, and I just really loved these quiet, personal moments between the two of them on this absolutely gorgeous seascape. Mora quietly leaves the boat without telling Bean, and the boat crashes on shore in Dreamland, knocking Bean out in the process. The rest of the episode is played without a clear indication whether it's real or it's a dream. Mora takes Bean back to her home on Mermaid Island, and the two get swept up in a pretty adorable romance. Mora plays a song for Bean, and it's seriously so cute.
I'll keep you safe, I'm on your team, and when it feels like just a dream, believe it's true.
The two of them hook up, but then Bean wakes up back on the shore of Dreamland with the belief that she dreamed the entire thing. But her necklace washing up on the shore hints that it probably wasn't a dream at all. I'm looking forward to them following up this story in future episodes because they didn't follow it up in this part. So while I don't get as much humor out of the show as I'd ultimately like, I'd be lying if I said the characters and the relationships don't make it all really worth it. I still love Bean, Elfo, and Lucy, and the fact that I so quickly grew to like Mora and become invested in her relationship with Bean is just a sign of great characterizations. Plus, more world building with the Mermaid Society, and dear lord, I just have to keep shouting out these incredible backgrounds. This is the prettiest thing I have ever seen in a cartoon. The episode Bad Moon Rising gave us a really great story between Bean and Una of all people. Una returned to Dreamland to support Derek and also to keep an eye on Zog through his madness. It was awesome to see Bean and Una start to bond, and the scenes where they did Una's drugs together were super funny. We also learned that Oddval's and Cercerio's secret society has seemingly coordinated the assassination of the previous kings and rulers of Dreamland, and also that Una previously was in love with King Yogg, Zog's older brother. So much backstory to cover. I really enjoyed episode 8, Hey Pig Spender, which followed up some very early storylines and finally shows us Bentwood firsthand. Basically, they discover that Merkimer's body, now inhabited by a pig's mind, has been lurking around and looking like a monster. I loved the design of Bentwood. It feels the most high fantasy of any society in the series. It's got a very high-class, rich vibe and is maybe a little bit gaudy, but dang, I sure do love these designs. Also, really loved this gag.
Actually, not as grand as I thought it'd be.
That's the garage.
Overall, this episode was definitely the most filler. It was fun, but it didn't overtly tie to the overarching story too much, but honestly, I don't mind. It was a fun premise with Pig Merkimer basically weekend at Bernie'sing his former body, and had some cool fantasy twists with pig-brained Merkimer learning to speak and developing sentience. This episode also features some of the more poorly implemented 3D assets, but it could have been worse. The final 2 episodes ended the season in a very effective and intriguing way. Una and Derek leave Dreamland for the high seas, and Zog is sent away due to his madness, basically leaving Bean fully in charge of Dreamland. I really enjoyed seeing Bean take charge. This is the most responsibility she's had so far in the series, and she honestly handled it really well. I also really enjoyed the weird ventriloquist storyline with Zog, who is able to speak normally through this dummy. But also, this is for sure Dagmar who sold him the dummy, right? I'm really curious what the deal with that is. Also, there is definitely something going on with Miri the Mop Girl, who it's heavily implied is a witch or wizard of some sort. Stay tuned for a video theorizing about her coming soon. Ogres start to attack Dreamland in search of Elfo, which I assume is because it seems as though Elfo is half ogre based on the reaction we saw in part 2 from the Ogre Queen. We also learned that Dreamland seemingly was originally an elf settlement.
Legendary ancient seat of elven power.
I'm very curious what this could mean moving forward, and I do have some theories, but again, stay tuned for more videos. Lots I want to speculate about. The end of the episode ends on probably the most cliffhangers we've ever had in one set of episodes. Elfo is taken away by ogres, Zog is sent to an insane asylum, Lucy is decapitated and wakes up in heaven, and Bean has seemingly been brought to hell by Dagmar. So much intrigue, and honestly, very exciting because the show doesn't seem intent on re-establishing the status quo anymore, which means that we should get exciting follow-ups to these cliffhangers in part 4. The silhouette of whoever this Hellman is definitely intrigues me. Anyone have any idea? Have we seen any characters shaped like this before? I'm sure this has to do with the Maru prophecy that we learned about back in part 2. So far, Dagmar's goals have been incredibly unclear, other than the fact that she seems to definitely need Bean for something related to this prophecy. So I do think that overall, Disenchantment Part 3 was probably the most I've enjoyed the show. It still hasn't won me over in the comedy department, sadly, but this season gave me by far the most intriguing and engaging story the series has had to offer. The expansion of the world building and lore almost felt too much at times, but I think it's going to make it that much more fun to revisit and speculate about. I've already got a ton of theories and aspects of the lore I want to make videos about, so keep an eye out, those will come shortly. The characters continue to be what keeps me hooked on the show, and honestly, one of the big issues with the previous 2 seasons was that I wasn't particularly invested in many of the side characters. I'm happy to say that part 3 seems to have rectified that. Una, Derek, Zog, Merkimer, Mora, even Oddville and Cercerio, I think they all made big strides this season in becoming deeper and more nuanced characters. And I've already mentioned this a bunch in this video, but the world building was seriously so good. We saw the Trogg Society, Fairyland, a much better look at Steamland, Mermaid Island, Bentwood. There's so many cool societies and locations now through 30 episodes that we visited, and it really makes the world feel huge and properly occupied. None of these places feel hollow or like they're just there for eye candy. They all have unique and distinct vibes, from their designs to the way their inhabitants behave. It's really cool to see. I will say, some of these cliffhangers do feel like they're starting to repeat beats. Elfo died in part 1 and escaped heaven/hell in part 2, and now part 3 basically put Lucy in that same position, though I do suppose it's a little more interesting that a demon managed to get to heaven. That's fun, but I'm sure he's gonna find his way back to Dreamland somehow. All 3 parts have also ended with Bean being taken or confronted by her mother in a new place, though I suppose I'm encouraged because, like I said before, they really leaned into serialization and didn't let everything revert to the status quo this time around. They also laid the groundwork for so many mysteries. I'm guessing a lot of them are going to end up tying together somehow. If every single mystery they set up was fully separate, they would need an entire season just to wrap them up. So many of them have barely given us information, like Bean's electric princess powers, or well, anything Dagmar related, but again, these two particularly feel like they probably are related. Overall, I'm more excited than ever to actually dig into this show and explore the characters, mysteries, and lore. I mostly enjoyed the first 2 parts, but after part 3, my mind is spinning with possibilities and different sides of the show to speculate about. I've already got 2 video ideas to explore specific aspects of the show more in depth that should be coming very soon, if they aren't out already, so keep an eye out for those. I also would really love to explore these characters with analyses the same way I've covered some of the characters in Futurama and King of the Hill, but I'm wondering if that might better be left for after the entire series has run its course. Let me know what you think. I'd love to know what you're all hoping to see. So we know that this show is renewed through part 4, and after that it's still a mystery. I'm expecting that they might get picked up for 1 additional season, which would basically be 2 more parts, 20 more episodes. I think this show would do really well if it were just a 60 episode run, and I don't know if Netflix would renew it beyond that. Though I do think the show's popular, but we've never seen an animated series from Netflix go beyond 6 seasons. BoJack got 6 seasons, Big Mouth's gonna get 6 seasons, and I feel like Disenchantment ending with 6 parts feels right. And that's where I want to pass it off to you. Did you like Disenchantment Part 3? Has the lore intrigued you as much as it has me? Let me know below in the comments. If you like this video, do all that liking and commenting stuff, and stay tuned. Peace.
Johnny! Two cellos!